Right, good afternoon everybody once again. Firstly, thank you very much for joining us in this graveyard slot. We've managed to entice you away from the food and the hustle and bustle of the exhibition area. We've got two great speakers for you this afternoon. You're not here to listen to me, so I'm going to let them just get on with it. On the topic of business-aligned learning, how many of you, just a quick question, really feel that you are aligned to your business today? Pop a hand up if you feel that is really the case. Just a couple. Fabulous. That means that there's a maybe down the back there. That means hopefully by the end of this session, well not hopefully, I know for a fact, you will have something to take away with you that will help you when you get back to work. So to Don's bridge question that I'm sure you've heard at every single session you've been to. And I can guarantee you've got at least one thing to take with you because one of the exercises has a takeaway with it. So with no further ado, if I could introduce first of all from a company called GFK, or if you're German, GFK, because that's where they come from. Jason Flynn, who's the Global Learning Director there, and he will be followed by Krystyna Gadd, who's the founder of How to Accelerate Learning. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason.
Thanks, Andy. Well, hi everyone. Great to see so many of my peers in the room, and it's a little nerve-wracking when you stand up here and say, look at all the things I've been doing, when I know that you're probably all doing many great things as well. Today I want to give you a little flavour for what we've been doing at GFK to really raise the profile of our learning and development function. And also there's a bit of my history in there and how I'm trying to raise my profile in the organisation. And I think all this ties in really nicely to the next part of the session as well, which is when Krystyna's going to go through this stakeholder mapping that you can see on the tables here as well. So hopefully from my presentation, you'll get some of hints, tips, ideas, inspiration, maybe, that you can take back into your businesses and also use in the next session today. So first of all, has anyone actually heard of GFK? There's a few hands going up. It's more than I had a recent presentation, so that's great. We are a market research agency. We offer a full service when it comes to market research. And we are now the 5th largest research agency in the world. So we come from a very academic background. It's all steeped in statistical studies. And we've grown from our headquarters in Nuremberg. We now have about 100 offices around the world with around 10,000 people. And we do the full range of market research, from online to panels and face-to-face. Basically what we're trying to do is get data to our clients. So trusted provider of data, so that people can make their decisions. And we have around about half of the Fortune 500 companies as clients at the moment. But the new technologies, AI, is really taking what we do to the next stage. So currently, we're looking at, what tablets, what fridges are being sold, where they're being sold. But we've got all this other data, and companies have a lot of other data as well. So we have to mend all that together now to come up with recommendations. Our clients are expecting a lot more from us. So they want, basically, these recommendations in the palm of their hand. So if they're talking to their sales teams, their marketing teams, new product development teams, they have that there straight away that they can use. So we want to become the trusted provider of prescriptive data analytics. And this is a big step for us because, like I say, we come from this background of being purely a market research, data-driven organisation. So I suppose, I don't know who was in the keynote yesterday with Marcia. She was talking about prescriptive analytics. It seems to be coming up everywhere at the moment. And for us as an organisation, we needed to get to grips with what this meant as well, because we need to move from this traditional agency into this provider that's really trusted to help inform the strategy of all our clients. And I suppose most companies have a slide like this that is, look at our history, look at the strength we have. We've been going for 85 years. And it's a really powerful message for our clients. But from my point of view, from a learning and development perspective, this is also some of the barriers that I'm facing when it comes to making an impact in the organisation. I know this is being videoed, so I've got to be a little bit careful about what I say about my own organisation, but we do come from a German academic institute. So we kind of have this history of training being in a class, and that's the only effective form of training in some people's minds. And you also see that we've grown to where we are, like many other organisations, through mergers, acquisitions. So we had, at one stage, we had 200 different offices and people doing things in completely their own way. So trying to get a uniform, consistent approach to training has been one of the key things that we've had to face as an organisation. So my journey, I was fresh-faced 20 years ago when I joined the organisation. It seems like a really long time ago, but actually in that time I've been through 3 mergers and acquisitions, 8 managers, 7 different job roles in local, then regional, then global training departments. So there's always been something to keep me entertained and keep me busy. And also, that gives us an opportunity where I feel I can make a change. So if you think back 20 years, my first role was as a training administrator. And I remember my first few days, I was just constantly printing out acetates. Do you remember those? And that was because even though we had the projectors, no one trusted them. They didn't trust the technology. So we had all these acetates that I was printing out ready. But if you think about how far we've come in that 20-year period, and how we're using technology now for training, it's unrecognisable. But in the eyes of our learners, I'm not sure we've actually made that much of a difference yet. So that was one of the things that I really had to face, because if I went back a year to January 2018, I became the head of learning, which is quite a hard role to take if you've been within an organisation for such a long time. You've got to be able to show that somehow you're going to make a difference. And what I had to do really was change people's perceptions of myself and of the learning department. And I had to come up with an approach to do that. So the first thing here really became my mantra, and that was relevance and simplicity. And it seems so obvious, but talking to everyone in the business, they were saying, you've got so much training, we don't even know where to start. And actually, we've got a history, all of us, of probably overcomplicating stuff. And I was really guilty of that myself. So that was the first thing, and I'll come on to explain all of these. The second is get naked. I know it's Valentine's Day. Believe me, it's nothing to do with that. What I will be doing is explaining what that meant to me personally, the importance of co-creation and how that's not a buzzword. And then the last 2 really were about getting people talking about training. From firstly me talking about training, but then trying to get other people to talk about it and talk about what we're offering the business and what we're providing, and how we're working with the business to really come up with something that has an impact on the strategy. So relevance and simplicity. I'm going to focus really on our online offering here. We've worked with Saba, have a learning management system. I'm sure many of you have worked with learning management systems or have them in your organisation. And they're great. They can get all the content that we need out to all the different geographic locations. Everything's consistent, we can monitor everything. And so it's really bringing something to the organisation that, we desperately needed. And we've been working with Saba now for about 8 or 9 years, and we started off with just one part of the organisation. So about 2,000 people in a few countries. And that was the way we went for a number of years. And then in April 2017, so less than 2 years ago, we said, right, everyone needs this. So we rolled it out to, at the time, 14,000 people. So that's a big jump. And what we did, we stuck every bit of content we had, we stuck it on the platform. We said, you've got this tool now, it's great, just go and use it. And guess what? People didn't really use it. So one of that was kind of 6 months before I came into role. So my biggest challenge straight away was, well, let's get people using it. So how do we do that? So everything we had previously was kind of out of the box. We were using terminology such as groups, communities, catalogues from a learner's point of view, they don't know what that means. They don't know where to go. So we had to really rethink the way that we were offering our platform. And we did this by workshopping it. We had members of staff, we had marketing teams, importantly, we had Saba in the room with us. We came up with a way of making it look cleaner and easier to navigate. And we conducted user experience testing to make sure that we were on the right track. And you'll see that from here, we wanted to make it really easy to navigate. Everything was topic-based. We thought about what are the key topics that people go to? How are they going to find them quickly? But we also needed to make sure they could still find their learning plans and things like that. So we weren't throwing everything out. We were just making it easier, and we refined it as we went. And this also led to, people then using the platform, but in a way that they're familiar with. We tried to borrow from things like YouTube, as you can see here. We wanted to make it feel familiar. You don't want to have a whole guidebook about how you should be using a platform. It just doesn't make sense. And we're continuing to learn as we go. But the relevance and simplicity has to also come back to things like the content. The content itself has to be relevant. So we're going through this massive change in the organization. We're using AI and technology to really drive this change. But we kept using this word digital, and no one knew what digital means. You see it all the time, digital, agile. What do they mean? So we had a quick co-creation of 4 courses about what digital actually means, what it means for our industry, what it means for us as a company, but what it means for individuals. What are the skills and mindsets that people are going to need in this environment? And obviously we created using all the same stuff that we would normally use for our courses, lots of animation and graphics and video, but also real life examples. How are people using this stuff already? AI is being used in Alexa and things like that already. People are using it. It's just getting comfortable with it. But at the same time, we have to remain trusted as a provider of data to our current clients. So we made sure that we had some compliance training, but not too much and not too boring. We made it all scenario based. We made it that people could find their skills gaps and then go and look and find the actual code of conduct if they need to. And we were building at the same time, real interactivity into the platform. A lot of our job now, we can't create everything. We've got to collate. So we create some videos maybe, but then we find some stuff from around the web that gives people just enough information. We're not really worried too much in some topics about bums on seats. We don't want to look at percentage completion. We want to look at how the company has an understanding of the topics. So we use lots of collated materials. But sometimes you do need to have a set program. So an example here is our sales excellence program. We had about 800 salespeople across the globe who had really different experiences of what learning would be. And a key thing we created was the license to sell. I don't know if you can tell where we got the idea from. But basically the license to sell was putting into bite-sized chunks a way of having a foundation of training for these 800 people who are spread across the globe. We know they're busy people, so we broke it down into packs that take about half an hour. And really, this was all bite-sized skills training. We wanted everyone to have the same language and terminology. And that's a real big thing when you don't know your starting point. And obviously, we could test as we were going through, and that's great. Every online platform can offer this. But we really needed to embed this learning as well. So we came up with notes that people could use as coaching notes for line managers and for the heads of the businesses who could really, anytime they've got half an hour or 45 minutes with their team, put it into practice. But we would need to be part of the bigger picture as well in learning. So the sales excellence area was also where they could find the account plan templates. It would be where they could find their meeting notes. It's also where we'd have our expectations of them in their role. So we're trying to have proper sales excellence, which is tied in with the communication, with the messaging they're getting from their bosses, and also to the training. One other thing that we put in there as well was a discussion wall. It's a little bit hit and miss, if I'm honest, but people could post their questions on there and they would get a response. We made sure we had people that were watching this at all times so that they could get their feedback. One thing I'm particularly pleased with as well is learning moments. We're trying to change the concept of what learning is. people go to Google, they go to YouTube, they find something that's really quick, and they don't realize they're learning. So we wanted to replicate that. We created our own 1 minute, 2 minute learning moments that go out every Monday to a target group, but all of them are in a library that's on the platform. So we're trying to encourage this continuous learning and trying to really get people thinking differently about what learning is, moving away from that class-based. But also, these are great because the learning moments aren't just focused on that one business area, they're focused on everyone in the business. There's time management tips, things like this. So it really gets people talking and creating a buzz. So the next step in my approach actually came about this time last year. I was in a pub in town here, and I was talking to one of my friends who actually works in learning and development, and we were talking about football and holidays and everything, and he just hit me with, what's your goal for this year? And obviously I'd just taken over this new role, and I thought, but it kind of jumped to me straight away. My goal has to be to really raise my perception with the C-suite, with the senior managers, the executive leadership team. How can I really raise my profile and be seen not as this person that's worked in a training team for all this time, but as actually now a valued member of a senior leadership team? And he had some really great advice for me, but the one that really stands out was, has anyone seen this book or read this book, Getting Naked? It was a bit of a revelation to me, actually. It's very short. I read it on one plane journey over to the headquarters in Nuremberg. And really, it's about being honest and open, accepting your vulnerabilities. One thing I always thought, sitting in front of in a room of the board members, I thought I might sound stupid asking certain questions. But it kind of told you there'll be other people in the room as well who are probably thinking the same thing. So just ask it. Feel that vulnerability and make it work for you. And I'm not normally big into self-help books and things like that, but this actually, there was a quote there that really resonated with me. It was written geared towards consultants. So I had to think a little bit about how it might actually measure out for me as well. But clients don't expect perfection from their service providers. And I think the one thing I was worried about was getting something wrong. New in my role, I didn't want to get something wrong particularly. But they do expect honesty and transparency. And, it made me just feel that a little bit more confident that I could speak with them. And, I must have been put into position for some reason. Maybe I've done a good job down the years as well. I can bring this experience, I can bring my knowledge of the learning environment, and I can add something. And that's really where the book really helped me to kind of raise my game to that next level. So the third is co-create. And sorry about that. One thing I would say about this is we're seeing it everywhere at the moment. Like the word digital, like the word agile, it's kind of become a buzzword. But I really had to co-create because I've got a team of 6 people and we've got 10,000 people that we're trying to deliver training to. And from a resource issue, we just can't do it all. So we have to co-create. But it also makes sense for raising the profile of the learning department and for making us aligned with the business because, it sounds cliche, but we have to put people at the heart of everything we do. And the people in the organisation aren't just our learners. They're our target audience, great, but also these are our presenters and our trainers. These are the guys that we're getting up to stand in front of people. They're also our leaders, so they're helping us establish our strategy and helping us as a training team to actually provide some of that support for their strategies. But they're our subject matter experts, they're our script writers, they're also our developers, they're recording their own videos and things like that. And also, they review for us. And hopefully they end up being our evangelists and our champions as well. So an example of some of the training that we've been developing recently, we've got a whole suite of new products. And previously, we may have gone straight to the product guys and said, right, tell us everything you know about this product, and we'll try and bash it into some training. And they would tell us down to the nth degree everything we needed to know. But because we're working now in broader teams, we're actually finding that our training is shorter, sharper, more relevant. So a good example is if you're buying a car, you don't go along and speak to the mechanic. And that's previously what we were doing. You speak to the salespeople, you speak to the end users, you speak to everyone else. And that's how you get a perception of how you actually need to, what would you want to buy with the car, but also what we need to create when it comes to the training. So the training itself, really simple and relevant now. We've tried to make it completely value-based for the end users. And I know we've always said that that's what we're doing, but actually I think we're doing it now, which is a big difference. But co-creation doesn't necessarily just happen naturally. We put people in a room and, people don't know what to expect. So we've tried to make it as simple as possible for the people that are helping us to co-create the training. So even if it's just producing a video, we'll give them some guidelines. We'll say, this is how you can record a video on your own phone. Here's some apps that you can maybe use. But simple things as well, just lighting and things like that. But we've got guidance all the way through the process. So we'll come up with some key questions that we need answered in the training. We have a process that puts in place, what we expect from the people that are involved. And it doesn't seem very agile, does it, having process nowadays? But what we found is people really appreciate it. It doesn't mean that because we have process that we're not flexible. Each project's going to be based on its individual merits, and we'll work with the individuals in the way that they can really make the most value for the project. But some guidance is really necessary. But we did all this great stuff. We made a lot of changes to what we were doing. We felt we were making a great impact, but really, we weren't telling anyone. I bet, again, a lot of us are quite guilty of, we create a course, we send out an email maybe and say, this course is available. Some people may get a notification that says, this is now in your learning plan. And then that's it, we move on to the next project or the next course or the next program. And that really wasn't hitting the mark. So what we wanted to do was create a real buzz around some of the things that we were doing. We wanted to make sure that, you can see here, just some of the examples of what we're doing. We carried the branding over from the course and from the programs into wider communication. We would make sure that we were getting quotes from people around the business as they were going through, making sure these were heard. And that's the key thing, is really getting some of these messages out there. And what we've tried to do really is get in front of people as much as we can. There's no compensation really for that, one-to-one interaction, even if it's via Skype. You're telling people yourself, the message is so much stronger than it coming through, just in an email or a notification. So we try and get to all staff and team meetings, even if we can't be there physically. Demos, I try and show off the platform as much as we can. Along with Saba, we did some great stuff to make the platform so much more user-friendly. But some people still only remember what it was like when it was launched. If you haven't got some compliance training in there, that somebody needs to go to, why do they need to go there? What's the incentive to get there? So that's kind of where some of these nudges come in. Things like the learning moments, great 1-minute standalone video, but also it could be a teaser for other things that we've got on the platform. Just really trying to draw people in, change the perceptions. Doesn't happen overnight, but we really want to try and get there. Emails and notifications, the simplicity and relevance that I talked about earlier really comes back into this as well. We're across 100 different countries. I'd hate to think how many different languages are used there. And we baffle people with the language we're using. Just keep it really simple. So here's a top tip. Here's now a course that you can go to and make sure that the relevance is there within the subject line. All stuff that I'm sure we all know, but I, for one, definitely wasn't preaching until recently, so making sure we're doing that. And news articles. We have an internal comms team. The amount of articles that I would see published on a weekly basis that were talking about topics that we had training on, but there was no mention. There was no mention of these topics in there at all. So we wanted to try and find the linkage. How do we link up what we're doing with what the business is doing. Again, aligning everything that we're doing to the strategy of the organisation. And that's really important, because if we're doing that well, the business is going to do our talking for us. Because I mentioned earlier some of the roles that people are taking on. You know, you've got your champions and your sponsors at the top level. Well, they can push down the message. You know, the message will come through to people from the top level. But we know that will get lost somewhere down here as well. So then you've got your program owners and your subject matter experts. These are the people helping you develop the training. You saw how important that co-creation was for us. Well, they actually buy into it. They actually think that they own this content. And they do. It's their content. So they will go along to their meetings and say, well, have you not seen the training about this? I did some really great stuff. And that really helps to push it out. But then also, you know, happy learners are going to be our evangelists. And we're seeing this already. We're seeing a big change in the way the organisation is using the learning. We're not there by any means. You know, we only launched in last summer, relaunched last summer. So, you know, but we are seeing about a 30% increase in monthly users. About 30 organisations going on there every month. It's not all the same users, but our course completion is up 142%, which is great. But 2,000 videos are being watched every month, little bite-sized videos. And a key one for me there is a 350% increase in the people leaving messages, leaving feedback. So people really are talking. And because of that, we're being invited into conversations earlier as well. So we have new products launching. We're now part of that go-to-market strategy. You know, we're not being brought in at the end to say, we need some training on this. We're actually there when marketing are there and when the product developers are there, which is great. But there's always more we can do. I mean, I think we're on the right track. There's a long way we need to go still. We need to continually learn as a team as well. We're working out what works well for us, what doesn't work so well. We've tried to come along to things like this and learn from our peers as well. Hopefully, you know, you guys have taken something away from what we've been doing. My biggest message would be, don't be afraid to try something new. We come from like I say, an academic background where things have been done the same way for 85 years. We can't change things overnight, but we can start to make a difference. We can start to see an impact within the business. And so really, my tips would be, you know, try something new. Make sure everything's relevant and simple wherever you can, and co-create with the business. Because if you're co-creating with the business, then naturally you're kind of falling into being aligned with the business and giving them something that, one, they want, two, makes a difference, and something that they really, really believe in. So with that, I'll hand over to Krystyna. And obviously I'll take any questions you have at the end of the session, and after the session, please come find me.
There we go. Can you hear me at the back? Give me a wave if you can. Are you still yes, you are awake. Brilliant. Well done. Thank you so much, Jason, for that. That's a really good practical example of how you get aligned to the business. So my part of this session is going to be practical. There is a handout on the tables, so you're going to be using that. You're going to be also talking to each other as well and learning from each other, hopefully, as well. And what we're going to be doing is looking at how you can work with stakeholders, the right stakeholders, in the right way. So, if anybody hasn't said it to you today, Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. And maybe just turn to the person next to you and say Happy Valentine's Day as well, just now. Let's share the love in the room. So what about me? Just very briefly, I'll tell you who I am. My name's Krystyna Gadd. I'm founder of How to Accelerate Learning. And I've got a small consultancy, and we basically focus on helping people to perform better through better learning as well. Now, many moons ago, I was a chemical engineer and fuel technologist, and I moved out of that field to go into IT training for IBM. And that's where I fell in love with learning and just helping people to learn and helping people to perform better as well. And then I moved into soft skills training quite a number of years ago. And then most recently, from 2008, I've been a consultant with my own consultancy, working with lots and lots of different organisations in lots and lots of different ways, doing... Hello? Hello? Who was that? Somebody behind the screen. Anyway, so now if anybody knows me, they know I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to objectives. So I've got 2 objectives for this part of the session. And that's by the end, you'll be able to apply the stakeholder analysis grid to your stakeholders, create an action plan of which stakeholders you need to spend time with and why. Just put your hand up if you've come across the stakeholder analysis grid before. Just put your hand up. So quite a few of you have already. Well, good, because you'll be learning from these people. I hope you've spotted which ones put the hand up, okay? So what's the prize? What is it we're trying to achieve by actually getting to speak to the right stakeholders in the right way? So one of Jason's points was get the business to do the talking. And if you get the business to do the talking, you find out much, much better what the business actually needs. And what it can do is it can avoid those false starts. Those times when you have a project that started and then suddenly resources get cut, budgets get cut, because it's not really heading the way that the organisation wants it to go. You can also, instead of something roaring loudly at you, telling you what it is that you actually need to be doing, you find out what's really going on behind the curtain. You find out what is actually happening and what people need. You start to distinguish between what people want, what their desires are, and what they actually really need. And that's how you get more closely aligned to the business. But you can only do that by aligning yourselves with the right stakeholders in the right way. Now, when Jason said, get the business to do the talking, the business, what is the business? Is this a whole bunch of faceless people? Or is it actually a whole bunch of people that we know? Those people who are actually interested in what we do and whether we get good results or not. They are human beings. Go and look for them. Go and find them. Those people are interested in what you do. Now, the stakeholder analysis grid, I'm going to go through this very quickly, and then you're going to do an activity. And so let me just talk you through this. It's a 2x2 matrix. It's very, very simple. I like things which are very simple and straightforward. It stops me from getting confused. So on the vertical axis, you've got impact. Those people who have got impact and influence within the organisation. And on the horizontal axis, you've got those people who are going to support you. Now, in the bottom left-hand corner, have I got a pointer here? No, I can't point it, but you can see it. You've got the undead, those people who have got very little impact within the organisation and give you very little support. Hands up if you know somebody or some people who are like that, the undead. Yes, I think we've all come across them somewhere, but we won't mention names. We'll keep it quiet. Then we've got the snipers. Those are the people who... they neither give you any support, but they do have impact and influence within the organisation. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about those in a moment. Then in the bottom right-hand corner, you've also got then the networkers. Those people who don't have any impact at the moment, but they do give you a lot of support. And then finally, in the top right, we've got the evangelists, those people who have got lots of impact and influence within the organisation, but they also give you lots of support. So let's just dig a little bit deeper, very, very quickly into these. So the undead, you know who they are. They're that constant nagging voice. They're those people that get you on the phone and you just think, I'm just going to do it just to get them quiet, just to shut them up. But they don't have any impact and they don't have any influence. So why are we spending so much time with them? They drain you of your energy. Then we've got the snipers, those people who have got impact and influence, haven't quite realised how amazing you are yet, and do nothing to support you. They do nothing to promote what you do. They're the sorts of people that will probably badmouth you about what you're doing. They will be naysayers about L&D. And we probably know those people, but your hand up if you know who the snipers are in your organisation. Yeah, we've got a few of those here as well. Brilliant. The question is, they might need to be converted because they could be useful. And then finally, we've got the networkers. We've got those that keep you going. They've got very little impact at the moment, but who's to say in the future whether or not they'll have any more impact and influence? And so you need to keep an eye on those. But they're great for keeping you going. They're great for boosting your morale. And they act as a bit of a pick-me-up as well. And then those people that you should be spending the most time with are the evangelists. These are the people who've got high impact and a high influence within the organisation, and they give you support as well. Those are the people that if the project is going, they're going to give you resources and budgets, and they're going to support you. They might even be useful for helping to convert those snipers. Who has a few evangelists that are there for them? Yeah, few of you. Okay. So this is the time when you're going to do some work, and it'll be useful if you aren't sitting very close to somebody. You're going to have to start talking to people. So you've all got one of these stakeholder analysis grids on the table, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes. First of all, what I'd like you to do is, if you can come up with at least one person per quadrant, and then speak to each other on the table about what makes these people snipers, what makes them evangelists. And there's 2 questions particularly which I think are really interesting are, who should you spend least time with? And have you got enough support and or key influencers? So you've got 5 minutes from now to talk to the people on your table. Off you go. Okay, if I can get your attention, please. So, you've obviously been having some fabulous conversations here. I'd love to know what you've been talking about. So what are your thoughts about this stakeholder analysis grid? Anybody who'd like to share anything that they've discussed? Go on, put your hand up, be brave. Somebody over here. This side here, Andy.
Was it you?
Hi there. I was just trying to explain that networkers, even though they have a low impact, they make you feel good, not because they tend to feel good because you're networking and they give you positive feedback. But over the years, I realized that through networkers, you can harness bits of information on how to handle the snipers.
Right, okay, good point. Yeah, so we need to get those snipers on board sometimes, and so the networkers could be useful. So thank you very much for that. Yeah. Anybody else, any other thoughts about what you discussed? I know you were talking about stuff. Mike, thank you.
Yeah, so we were talking about potentially having evangelists who, on an overall strategy, are really positive, but when it actually comes to, I think you were saying, like the tech side, because they saw it as more of a shadowy area, they actually became snipers, even though their overall strategy they were really positive about. So it's then converting that from making them evangelists throughout the whole thing, not just certain areas of what they're trying to do.
Okay, so for different things, different areas, you could get some evangelists turning into snipers. Did anybody discuss how you might convert those snipers into evangelists? Anybody at all? What were your thoughts? Come on, I'd love to know.
I'm sure I saw a hand going up.
There was a hand up at the back there. It's all Tina's got the mic there. Thank you.
I think it's what we were saying previously about co-creation and getting them involved, because if they don't feel that they have that buy-in, in my organisation, it's a lot of our HR kind of business unit people partners, and we rely on them sometimes to advocate messages, but because they're not part of maybe the strategy and the design, that they don't feel as included and as bought in, and as therefore don't promote and articulate our messages as positively as we would like.
Okay, thank you very much. So co-creation might be a way to actually get people to become on your side rather than sort of like trying other ways. Any other ideas, any other thoughts that you had whilst you're in your discussions? I know you were having discussions, I can hear you. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of this activity. So, on the other side of the stakeholder analysis grid, you've got an action plan. So what will you do to improve stakeholder engagement? So we've already heard a few of the tips. We might try and do co-creation. We might try and use the networkers to find out information on the snipers. We might use the evangelists to convert the snipers. But what are you going to do to improve stakeholder engagement? So I'm going to give you another 5 minutes, and I will be asking you again to share some things. What are your actions going to be from here? So what are you going to do to improve stakeholder engagement? And I'm going to give you another 5 minutes to do that. Okay, if I could get your attention, please. So I'd love to know what sort of things you're going to be doing. Again, I know you've been having some great discussions. So would anyone just like to share just one action? So Andy, just go to a table and look if there's somebody who's just willing to. Look, there's a guy behind you. So straight away his hand went up. What are you going to do?
So I've got a sniper, let's call him Bob.
Okay.
And
a sniper called Bob, right? Okay.
So far he's been flip-flopping a little bit, but generally I've been trying to work around him, and I know in the long run that's going to come back and bite me. So I just need to actually engage him more, keep him more informed, so that he's not in a position where he's going to be feeling uninformed and therefore more aggrieved and more likely to fire out shots.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point, actually, keeping people informed, and informed in the right way as well, because I've spoken to people sometimes when I've done this activity with in-house teams, and what they've said is, yeah, but you know, he's a sniper to us, but he's like an evangelist to this other team, so what is it they do? And they're just treating him in the way that he wants to be spoken to. He wants graphs and tables rather than perhaps reports and things. And so you've got to find their language as well. So a really good point, thank you. Any other actions out there? Great stuff, thank you.
Hi, a similar theme. We've got a sniper here and his name is Robert.
Robert, is that his real name, or do we have to
it is, yeah. Some people call him Bob. It's a similar point, but I think sometimes these high senior managers may have to pander to his or her ego a little bit and give them the day that's in it a little bit of special love for Valentine's Day, that you give them something that's going to appeal to them or to their teams in terms of maybe coaching, mentoring programs, that kind of thing, and get them on side by doing special things. So you're not treating them specially, but they think they're being treated differently to other senior managers. It can be important.
Yes,
bring them across from the dark side.
Thank you so much for that. Anybody else at all? There's a lady here, just up here. Thank you. Tina?
Which one?
Oh, who's going to get there first?
Are we in the middle? We can get 2 mics. I think 2 people. Was it you? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay.
I'm glad I don't have 2 mics. Building on what you were saying about some people want graphs, other people want reports. We were having a conversation about trying to talk to snipers about how we can help them achieve their goals rather than trying to get them to buy into us achieving ours. So talking to them about the business metrics that they're trying to achieve and how learning can support that, rather than giving the impression that learning is separate from things that they're trying to do.
That's a lovely point, actually. Try and find out from them what it is that they need. And I always think that a really safe way to do that is to adopt an air of curiosity. Because quite often people say to me, yeah, but how do we approach them? If they're quite antagonistic or if they're not on our side, how do we get them on side? And I think adopting an air of curiosity is always a safe way. Find out what it is that they do. Why is it what they're struggling with? Why do they think that they're struggling in that particular area? Ask lots of questions. It's never seen as confrontational if you ask questions and get interested in people. So having that air of curiosity is a really, really important thing, but find out from them. Was there a lady next to you who wanted to contribute as well? No, was it just her? Okay, it was just her. Anybody else got a sniper called Bob they'd like to tell us about? Anybody else got something they'd like to share? Come on, you must have some actions that it'd be great to share them with everybody else. What other things might you actually like to do? So lady at the front here, Andy.
Hi. So we use stakeholder maps, and a little bit to the point of the gentleman earlier, we use them regularly on big projects. Obviously we can't do it every single moment of the day. And it's important to keep them a living document because dynamics change. And so we layer between a stakeholder map and then individual personality maps, and to the point of having insights or Myers-Briggs profiles for each of them, so that we can see what behaviours appeal to them, so that we can then map our interaction with them to see what's important to them, and then talk in value and, to your point, metrics that are meaningful to them. So it's been a very powerful tool for us in our big L&D initiatives to say, use this stakeholder matrix and mapping to really effectively navigate around those that might not intuitively see L&D as part of their brief, but in fact, spoken to in a different way, they'll see then that actually it's very much embedded in the initiatives that they're actually bringing forward. And then putting down learnings from that. We've had one project that went particularly well, so we've tried to map out what went well, to try and then reproduce it again.
And what shift have you seen then in your organisation in doing this stakeholder mapping and finding out more about your stakeholders? What shift have you seen?
I think it's to your point that we're now more seen as business partners than training individuals. So we're seeing us being seen as embedded in the organisation rather than separate HR and training from the organisation. So it's helping to be a business partner. And I think that's a different mindset than how we were observed by the business in the past.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Anybody else would like to add to that at all? Any other actions? There's a lady over there. Like to add one of her actions?
I think it is to stop talking about we and them. It is actually only one we, and it is the business in the center. And if you do that and you have common goals, then L&D or whatever you want to call ourselves, I want to call myself a businesswoman, and I'm contributing to actually achieve results. And by that language, I think we speak the same language, and then we have different deliverables. And I think for this special group, if you have many snipers, what is it that they need? And what can we give them as a product or enlightenment in any way where they really see a benefit to themselves become the ambassador, see, okay, this really made a difference for me personally and for my organization.
Fantastic. So speaking the same language as a business, looking out for what metrics you can actually you can tap into. And I know a lot of people actually get worried about sort of data analysis and gathering data and stuff like that. If you get connected with the business and aligned with the business, and the stakeholders are behind you in what they're actually trying to achieve and helping you and supporting you, they will do the measuring. You won't have to do the measuring because it's their metrics, it's not yours. Any other points? We've got one last point, one last action. Anybody out there would like to share one? Well, thank you for those brave people who did share your actions.
In the absence of one there, I want to defend Bob because I had Bob as an evangelist. He was our CEO, but sadly he got taken out by the snipers. So if you have your CEO as the only person in that box and he gets taken out, that's just as bad.
Yes, yeah, goodness me, yeah. So in this session, the two objectives were that by the end you'll be able to apply the stakeholder analysis grid to your stakeholders. So please do take away the sheets. If there's extra ones on the table, take those away and perhaps do this as an activity with your team. You know, it's a valuable activity. We've already heard from this lady at the front how valuable it is within her organisation, and to get more business aligned. Also to create an action plan. Remember that you can do this analysis, but if you don't do any actions from it, then nothing will actually change at all. Now, I did say I would have a gift for everybody. So if you are interested in knowing how not to waste your money on training, I've got a book that's coming out in May. And if you want to get 20% off voucher, then please just leave me your details or email me or get in touch with me somehow. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, and you can find me quite easily. Are there any questions at all? Are you going to take over, Andy, with the questions?
Yeah, first of all, a huge thank you, Krystyna.
Thank you.
I've been blessed this year in sharing two superb sessions, so thanks to both of our speakers. I'm not going to talk to you about the bridge thing that Dom keeps going about. It's pretty obvious you've got some takeaways here on your table, and we've heard some from you already. Are there any questions from any of you for either Jason or Krystyna? More than one person is allowed to put their hand up, by the way.
Thank you, both Krystyna and Jason. Jason, question for you regarding user experience. You mentioned there was some initial work done towards ensuring the experience is good. So could you elaborate a little bit more on that, as in, did you use some heuristics to work on, the testing? How did you go about doing it?
The way that we did it, first of all, we had some group sessions where we were just discussing some of the feedback we've been getting anyway. Then what we started to do was set up a little lab. We did it in 3 countries. And there was nothing that we had in terms of quant data. We weren't measuring against anything, but we set some tasks. So we had, go and do these 6 tasks, regular tasks, and something that was a bit different. And we just recorded people as they were doing it. And we got them to talk through their experience while they were doing it as well. So we collated that information and we tried to come up with something that was a little bit better. So, working for a research agency, I have to be very careful about what I say is proper market research. But this was more of a toe in the water, and really, we were finding that we were getting similar results back. So that gave us a good steer on what we needed to change.
Okay, well, both speakers have shared their email addresses on the slides, which will be available to you. So feel free to contact either of them. They'll be here for a few minutes at the end of the session if you want to ask your question privately rather than in front of the camera. Thanks, everybody, for coming. And once again, thanks, Krystyna and Justin.